This is it. This new preamp is about to hit the market. A lot of people are going to be happy with this one.
I wonder if Thomas is working on a preamplifier.
Fuck yes, he did.
You remember the TSA 75?
So what would you expect to pay for the A75? Well, it's a lot less than you'd expect for an amp of this quality at the time.
You could buy like 4 of these and have the most insane home theater stack ever.
But it's important to stress that the comparisons I've been doing are with amplifiers that cost, I think, twice as much and about 15 times as much.
It's an absolute bargain, an absolute steal. You don't find amps like this at this price ever. At least I've never seen one.
Just kept thinking to myself, how can you get this for under $2,000, like $1,500? This does not make sense how you can get this amplifier for this money and what Thomas was able to do.
Performance of this amplifier, as far as how this sounds, it performs way above its price point. Like, you could compare this to amps, $6,000 and $8,000 amps, and still not sound as good as this amplifier.
Dynamic and intense, but yet soft. Galion TS 75, all that, $14.95 USD, giant killer.
That's right. So what did the TSA 75 lack in its giant killerism? Mid-range performance. Silky, smooth, warmth in the mid-range. It was lacking a little bit of that. Fixed. Thank you very much for tuning in. Galion's new preamp, pair it with the TSA 75. Done. Out of this world. Phenomenal. Okay, this brand has been making outstanding amplifiers so far. Outstanding. Starting with the TS 120 tube amp, KT88s, KT 120s. KT150s, but don't tell anybody. Then the TS34, the L34 tubes. Outstanding tube amplifiers. So good. Sorry, integrated amplifiers. Then the TSA 75. Galion's first little giant killer. Yes, giant killer. $17.95.
What you smoking? The TSA 75 is $14.95, man.
For a 2-channel, 100-watt Class AB push-pull of crazy good sound. And then you had the TSA 20 amps, Class A, with exotic boutique parts. Outstanding, like a diamond, and I mean a diamond. That amplifier, there's almost none left. Grab them while you still can. There's like a small handful left. After that, don't know if there's going to be any more. Hence, a diamond. Doesn't come around often. And now, the line of preamps is coming. This is the first one, the TS P75. That's right. I think this is Galion's entry-level amplifier, their first one. What's the price going to be? Well, I think the target price at launch is going to be around $1,800. $1,795, $1,850, $1,895. That's the ballpark. Why am I saying ballpark? Because these days there's this new little ingredient in the market called tariffs, so I have no idea what's going to happen with this preamplifier when it hits the market. But target price is around $1,800, or $1,850, let's say. Don't kill me, Thomas, if I screwed that up. Aim for $1,850. Whether tariffs are going to impact this or not, we'll see. So this amplifier, like many other Galion products, is manufactured by Doge in China, a phenomenal company that makes amazing audio products. At the exception of the TSA 20, that one is manufactured and designed and made in Canada. But this one here is also manufactured by Doge. And it seems to me like Doge and Thomas learned a lot from Doge's great preamp from many years back called the Doge 8, took some of the good elements of the Doge 8 and modified the design somewhat and created something that is, in my opinion, even better than the Doge 8. So this preamp uses 4 tubes, 12 AT7s. It has a huge army of clarity capacitors and a few Bumblebee Jupiter capacitors. And those, ladies and gentlemen, is sonic game changing when it comes to this. Because when you take the factors of combination of capacitors with the tubes, and you pair that with an amplifier like the TSA 75, and that for a combo under $5,000, stunning. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. The look is also made to match the TSA 75. So you can stack them like this, and they look great. They follow each other. So this amplifier has 4 inputs, analog inputs. There's no built-in DAC. This is very simple. There's no phono stage in here. It's just analog inputs and analog outputs. 4 analog inputs, 2 analog outputs that you can choose to use either with a power amplifier, pair of monoblocks with pair of subwoofers, or you can do like I do and biamp your speakers. That's right. I use this in my system as well with my stupid amplifiers because there's 2 analog outputs on this. So I use analog out 1 to go to my 211 amp to drive my full range drivers, and analog output number 2 goes to my Class D digital crown amplifier that controls my bass drivers that are in the corners of my room. So the bass corner of my room go 100 hertz and below, and everything else is done by my full range drivers that are controlled by my tube amp. And this puppy right here knocks it out of the park. Honestly, it's one of those devices that makes me sit and look at my expensive preamp. Yes, that's right. Talking about you over there, Melody. You're sitting in the corner by yourself, looking at me right now, grinding your teeth. I don't know why I need to keep you when this exists. Yes, you're better. You're better. But at the price of you're better, I don't know. That's why it's struggling inside me. Because this does an amazing job. And I'm comparing this to a very expensive preamp that has all the proper bells and whistles compared to a point-to-point, all tube, triple transformers, big transformers, lots of overhead current, tube rectified. Like everything in my reference preamp is top notch. Enter this little guy here, who, as you can tell, let's look at the inside, uses circuit boards. It's very clean, however. And like I said, it's an army of clarity caps in there. There's lots of them. And you add those Jupiter Bumblebees, which helps beef up the silky smoothness of the mid-range. This thing and the 12 AT7 tubes that are in there, maybe you could put really good tubes in there. But even the stock ones, wow. It holds its own with my reference preamp and manages to maintain all the dynamics, bass punch, and that luscious soundstage that my speakers and source is able to generate in my room. It holds its own. Yes, it does. It costs me more in tubes for my reference preamp than the price of this preamp. Hence, I'm at a damn dilemma again. Do I just go for this and sell my reference preamp? Thomas, see, it was worth you spending 3,000 hours of voicing this preamplifier. I'm not exaggerating. That's basically the amount of hours Thomas has put in voicing this preamplifier. You guys have to understand, voicing a preamplifier like this between combination of tube types, tube brands, capacitors, capacitor brands, that he's all playing with this, and then you got to listen to these combinations with a few different sets of equipment. You can't just voice this using just one amplifier. He's had to use several amplifiers, including very known on the market amplifiers, things like a Macintosh power amplifier. He's used that as part of his lineup to voice this thing. Because when you try voicing a preamplifier with only one amp, it takes a little bit of the character that's there. You switch to a different amplifier, Heck, the impedance matching might change a little bit when you do that. Well, it affects the sonic character. So just think about that for a second. All the combinations of tubes, combinations of caps, combinations of different gear, thousands of hours that are put into voicing this. Thousands. And it shows. Thomas, I like what you did with this one. You picked really well. I think that you also picked a sonic character that is basically a perfect piece of the puzzle to fit with the TSA75 amplifier, which I think is a great move on your part, because the amount of people that are so happy with their TSA75 but all agree that there's that little bit of mid-range warmth and smoothness that they would like to increase, there's the answer. And not only do you get that, it makes for such a much, much near perfect sonic character in the end. After it improves the mid-range, you already have that amazing, amazing, spacious, airy, detailed top end with the TSA 75. This refines it a little step further. Like, I'm telling you, like, when the current comes out of this thing, when the voltage comes out of this and heads to the TSA 75, creates a little step up in the characteristics of the airiness and the detail. And what I also notice with this, that the TSA 75 with a run-of-the-mill preamp doesn't have, is it adds such an amazing amount of decay. So when you hear instruments in a large hall, you will hear that decay with this preamplifier. And that is something, in my experience, that's usually reserved for stuff that is way up there in price range. Like, I've had to do a lot of acrobatics and tube acrobatics and rectifying acrobatics, adding chokes on certain things here and there to get the kind of decay that I have. This doesn't bring it to the same level, but man, you also don't want to do the headaches that I've had to go through to get the decay that I have in my system. But this will give you a sense of decay. And I think this is one of the things that a lot of people are going to notice if they don't have this level of decay in their system. When you plug in the P75 and you start listening to these little jazz recordings in these little acoustic venues, or you start listening to even these big, grand, classical orchestras, you start to be aware of how that decay lingers in the space and in the soundstage. And it also gives you the impression that the soundstage far more envelops your seating position. The overall experience is absolutely stunning. To have this with a TSA 75 at this price range, wow, stunning. Absolutely stunning. I am very impressed. And because it does that, actually, because it improves on the mid-range, all you TSA 75 owners are going to absolutely love what that does to your bass performance. Yes, because the better your mid and lower mid-range is, the tighter your bass will feel. Yes, no joke. No joke. I'm telling you. The better your mid-range is, the tighter, edgier, sharper your bass will feel. You'll get more of that thump in your chest. 100%. And I can tell you this, I know this, because I can tune everything I want in my system. If I want to hear just the mid-range and turn everything off in the bass, like everything that's 150 hertz and lower, I get to hear what that mid-range does. And if I do the opposite, if I'm just curious to hear what the bass does, I turn everything else off and just listen from 20 to 150, and I see what that does. Listen, the point I'm trying to make here is, in all this nonsense, is bass notes are not just reserved for 150 hertz and under. Instruments that generate real life bass notes are full of harmonics. It stretches up the spectrum. So the better your mid-range is, the better your bass will feel. It's all, and we could keep going on that ladder, because the better your highs are, the better your mid-range will feel, the more textured your mid-range would feel, and the more warm your mid-range is, well, the better smoothness your top end will feel like. It's all part of the same mechanism, if you will. Everything influences each other. So back to this, I notice that the bass improves, not in terms of power. Power is there with the TSA 75. It's absolutely there. What this is bringing, however, is bringing that tightness, that texture, that I already thought was amazing with the TSA 75, but because the mid-range improves, damn, now we're talking. Now we're talking. So if I had to give this a little bit of criticism, but it's not criticism. Sure, some of you will not like the fact that there is no balanced output, no XLR. But guys, this is not a balanced design. So if you don't have a balanced design, having XLR outputs or balanced outputs, not a good idea. Really isn't. I've had one in the past, a preamp that had balanced out and it wasn't a balanced design. Didn't have a good performance when like on any amplifier that I used it with. It just, because it's not a balanced design. It just doesn't work. Yeah, the remote's straightforward, very straightforward. It just has the right amount of buttons, power, mute, volume up, volume down, change the inputs. What else do you want? And it's a typical, I don't have it here right now, which goes to show how good a reviewer I am. It's a standard metal remote, very similar to the one on the TS120, TS34. It's a standard little black. I'll find a picture. Look, here's a picture. Let's check the inside. I'm happy that Thomas decided to go with 12AT7s here instead of going for 12AX7s, because the gain on the TSA 75 is already quite high. It's like 30 dB. So having a use of 12AT7s here, the gain is a little bit lower with these tubes than it would have been if it was a 12AX7, which is far more common, it seems, in components these days. On top of that, Thomas also said that he spent a lot of time with very different feedback settings on this preamplifier. So that also contributes to that 3,000 hours. And he's also spent time with the Doge head engineer to have them design a new toroidal transformer specifically for the needs of this preamp so that they didn't have to use an off-the-shelf component. Anyway, coming out soon, guys. Thanks for tuning in.